Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I will go through the list of questions. Some I have more to say on than others. First of all, those of you who do not know my context, I am teaching in a private girls' junior and senior integrated high school. And I believe that we are quite unique in Tohoku in that we actually have graded readers in our library. We have a fairly extensive collection. When I say graded readers, my definition is a little bit different than we've heard so far today. And I've graded almost all of the books in my library myself, hand graded them. Of course, we do have things like the Oxford Reading Tree, but we do also, as I think Maggie was asking, we do also use authentic materials. Basically, partly because I inherited a huge collection of them that I've put to use, and I also believe in using some authentic materials for the students to experience books written for native speakers, generally children's books. So, where is ER placed in my curriculum? At the school level, it's not part of the curriculum at all. I've taken this initiative on myself. It's basically a one-person effort, and it's been a tremendous amount of work. I'm very lucky. I've had a lot of support from Ben and others in the ER field, helping me get going. And we're still in I'm in my first year really sort of piloting the program. I started last year gathering ideas and putting some concept together, and this is the first year that I've actually been doing ER, which according to Ben may not be ER, it might just be using, because we don't have, it's not as structured as Ben's program by any means. Number two, okay, well, as far as my curriculum goes, I have four classes that I'm doing extensive reading with this year, but it is mostly, and it's not optional, but the students, as Ben said, I mean, it's really up to them to do it. I do about, I've tried to do consistently 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes of silent sustained reading in class, but I only see the students just once a week. So it's really not that much reading, and they are expected, encouraged to read outside of the classroom as well. My administration is, how can I put this? They encourage me to do this. They support me, I think, verbally and maybe a little bit emotionally, but I don't have a lot of support from my colleagues in my department, and my department head has given me some budget to buy additional resources, but I don't have support within my department. My colleagues generally don't see the use or point of extensive reading, so it's been very difficult for me to push this as a school program. So it's basically only my students and not even all of my students. Right now I have, as I said, 4 classes doing it. They're all first year high school classes. 3 are our general studies students, about 100 students doing that. And it's less intensive kind of extensive reading. And I also have 1 class of our English intensive program in first year, and those students I have been working much closer with, and they've been reading a lot more. The goals are more clearly defined, although I'm still working on putting together a more structured system. Those are 27 students. And I was really fortunate. The homeroom teacher, who also teaches them English 4 times a week, has bought into this idea a little bit. She was very gung-ho at the beginning of the year, so I was actually very lucky that 10 minutes a class for 4 times a week they were doing extensive reading in class, in her classes, and then another 10 minutes in my class. So they were getting 50 minutes a week of in-class reading, which is quite substantial for high school. What I discovered about a third to a half way into the year is that the teacher had basically given up on extensive reading, said that they just didn't have time for it. So unfortunately, it wasn't really a priority on her list, and so she really basically just cut it out, which is really unfortunate. At the beginning, the students were really reading a lot, inside and outside of class, but their I guess their stamina over the long term has really subsided because they haven't had as much support from the homeroom teacher. And if the teachers aren't buying into it, then the students don't buy into it, exactly like Ben said. So it's a big challenge. The goals of the program, I'm still working on defining clearer goals, but obviously I'm the only one setting them. And my general goal is very much like Ben's. My ultimate goal is to have the students just access English books and gain a sense of confidence and accomplishment in reading. Reading anything, first of all, reading English, obviously because I'm an English teacher. But just as Ben said, the students really, especially at the junior high school level where all of my students have just come from, really haven't had the opportunity to read much English at all. Almost all of it inside their textbooks. Very few of them maybe have read one or two readers, graded readers in a year. But my expectations are that they will read quite a bit more than that. And not at a difficult level. That was one of the keys that I learned very early on about extensive reading, is that they can actually understand what they're reading. So it has to be at a comprehensible level. As far as measuring my students' achievement, I've started out this year with the idea that the students would keep an individual bookmark, a reading bookmark that I designed, and they would keep this inside their book, and every time they read, they would just mark down the day and what time they started and what time they finished, and how many minutes, so that I didn't have to do the math on that. And I thought this was a really great system. The problem is that getting all the students to do it consistently is impossible. And I also discovered, these are from my English intensive students, these are from May, that I started to accumulate a tremendous amount of these. My intention was to scan them and laminate them and return them to the students, but I found that having hundreds of these things to deal with amongst all the other duties I had at school became just overwhelming. So I haven't returned any of them to the students. The English intensive students, I will return these when they return from their year abroad. I'll have some time next year to work with these. But my intention was for data collection. The problem is that it's inconsistent, so it's not really useful data. Some students, they read a lot, but they didn't bother filling in their little reading diary. I have a backup in the library for each of the classes that I'm doing, and when the students return a book, they are supposed to go to their page and write down the book that they've read, the date that they finished reading it, the level, which I'll talk about in a second, the points, which I'll talk about in a second, and then just a couple of word comments, just so that they can make some kind of statement about the book in English. And again, this worked really well at the beginning when I had support from the homeroom teacher. When her in-class reading time ended, basically this whole system really started to fall apart. So it's not going nearly as well as I had hoped, but I'm hoping next year to make some changes. I don't know if I'll have anyone to work with, it maybe just be me. So as far as the books go, Ben mentioned that they have 5 levels in his program, and because the students that I have are extremely low level, beginner or very, very close to beginner readers, I've actually broken it up into 12 levels, from very, very basic books with 50, 100 words in them, all the way up to a level 12 book, which is like a Harry Potter or something of that nature. And I've color-coded them all in 12 different taped colors, and I also have points on every single book. I've done word counts for all 1,900 books in my collection at the moment. And up to 1,000 words, I give half points, 1 point for each 100 words. So this book, for example, would have approximately 550 words in it. This one would have approximately 1,800 words in it, plus or minus 49 sort of thing. And the students would then accumulate points, and as Ben was saying, it's the word count that really counts. I did 12 levels because at the very beginning there are actually quite a lot of different levels for readers. So I tried to make it very easy for the students. So the first 8 levels are very narrow, and I've used Yomi Asusa levels, which is a Japanese design system, basically the readability of the book. So I have some very short books that are very high level because of the grammar and the language used, and I have some very long books that are relatively low level because the English is accessible. So it's not based on word count per se, but I've tried as much as possible to use the Yomi Asusa level. I mentioned I have 1,900 books, and I still have about 200 that haven't been graded and haven't had word counts. And every week I'll try to get to 2 or 3 or 4 of them, but it's a struggle. These are ones that are out of print. There's no information on them. There's nothing. So I'm basically skimming through them and doing a rough word count and trying to peg the level based on my 12 levels. As far as the future of VR at my institution, well, I think the future rests entirely on my shoulders. The more effort I put in, the more it will continue. But unfortunately, without support from the people around me, it's a struggle. So yeah, that's basically it. Thank you.